Welcome to the Classroom Management course. In this course, we will look at some of the many factors which contribute to effective classroom management. There are 6 units in the course. In Unit 1, we'll look at what classroom management is and why it's important. We'll look at what makes an effective teacher, what roles teachers adopt in the classroom and why they adopt these roles, and teacher expectations and their effects on classroom management. In Unit 2, we'll look at what can go wrong without adequate planning, the importance of knowing the classroom environment, identify possible interaction patterns and seating plans, identify the possible pitfalls of classroom equipment and materials and their effects on classroom management, and recognize the need to know the activities and materials before going into class. In Unit 3, we'll start to look at some basic classroom management strategies such as rules and routines and why they are essential to effective classroom management. In Unit 4, we'll build on Unit 3 and look at some strategies to use in class. These will include giving instructions and feedback and the effects of pace and timing. In Unit 5, we'll look at the importance of knowing your students, starting with different intelligences and learning styles, some theories of motivation and strategies for dealing with mixed ability classrooms. Finally, in Unit 6, we'll bring it all together with some practical tips. We'll identify some key principles for dealing with problem behavior and look at how problematic behavior changes according to 3 key age groups: young learners, teenagers, and adults. We'll identify some causes of these behaviors and also look at some solutions. In this unit, you will develop a definition of classroom management, recognize the importance of effective classroom management, identify the characteristics of an effective teacher, identify the different roles teachers adopt in the classroom, recognize the factors that affect the role a teacher adopts, identify teacher expectations of students in the classroom, recognize ways to avoid classroom management problems caused by differing expectations, and identify the roles a teacher adopts in a real classroom setting. Before we start, take some time to think about the following questions. What does the term classroom management mean to you? What does it include? What is the difference between classroom management and discipline? As you may have guessed, there are many definitions of classroom management, so let's look at some of them. The set of teaching behaviors by which the teacher establishes and maintains order in the classroom. This definition focuses on the teacher in an authoritarian role. The teacher is the person who decides on the rules of the class. The rules are in place to establish and maintain order. The student is to be controlled and corrected. The emphasis is on discipline. The set of teaching behaviors by which the teacher enables students to do what they want when they want to do it. Clearly, this definition is at the other extreme. There is a lack of management in this definition, and the role of the teacher is minimal. By implication, there is little room for teaching and learning in this definition. The set of behaviors by which the teacher develops good interpersonal relationships and a positive socio-emotional classroom climate. This definition focuses on the relationship between teacher and students and the need for positive rapport. Which of these definitions is closest to your own? If you have started teaching, you may have recognized yourself in some of these pitfalls. If so, identify 1 or 2 to focus on and monitor your progress. However, there are probably as many definitions of an effective teacher as there are students. Generally, though, these teachers will be strong in one or all of the following areas. An effective teacher is prepared, has good rapport with their students, and provides a safe environment in which to learn, is consistent, and is fair. Listen to the experiences from students of different kinds of teacher. What made them effective in the eyes of their students?
Everyone says they like friendly and relaxed teachers, but the best teacher I ever had was better than just friendly. She was really interested in us, and she paid attention to us. She always wrote things down in this notebook that she carried around, and she wrote the things that we were interested in. In class, she used those things as topics and sometimes in activities. She was a really kind person, and we felt that she liked and understood us. She wasn't a pushover though. If we did something wrong, or tried to get away with something we shouldn't, it never worked. We all worked together, and really trusted each other by the end of the year. That whole class was the best one I took at high school, because that teacher brought out the best in us.
The most effective teacher I ever had was a teacher who was quite strict. He was always really organized, had a bulletproof memory, and could account for every second of the class. Our lessons were always really busy and productive, and even if we tried to get through the activities really quickly, he always had something else up his sleeve. I learned so much in that class, and he really drove me to do more than I ever thought I could. Not everyone liked him, but everyone definitely respected him, and it's only really now that I appreciate how hard he worked for us.
I remember a teacher I had in high school. It's hard to explain why I think he was a great teacher. He was brilliant at explaining things. He could introduce a topic that you'd never thought about before, and by the end of the lesson, we understood more than we thought possible. I think for me, though, it was his sense of fair play. He was scrupulously fair. No one was above the rules, and he didn't favor anyone, or pick on anyone either. It didn't matter who you were, if you broke the rules, the consequences were the same. A lot of the kids in my class hated that. They thought he was inflexible, but that wasn't the case. He was flexible in his approach to his teaching, but he would not bend the rules for anyone, and I respected him for that. It made me feel that we were judged for what we did, not who we knew or anything else. He taught me to accept the consequences of my own actions, and that was a really valuable lesson.
The objective of each of these roles is slightly different, and of course the way in which the teacher manages the class will also change. Let's look at some of these roles. 1. Coach. In this role, the teacher focuses on student performance and simultaneously encourages, trains, supports, and corrects. The teacher provides practice and aims to produce maximum and sustained student effort, just as a sports coach works towards getting the optimum performance from athletes. 2. Manager. In this role, the teacher takes responsibility for scheduling, meeting targets, and organizing the class. A good manager groups people into teams to utilize each team member's strengths in the most efficient way possible. This is what teachers do too. 3. Assessor. This is a role many teachers feel uncomfortable with initially, particularly with formal assessment. However, it is a big part of a teacher's job. Student performance must be assessed fairly in order to provide effective feedback, which is a crucial aspect of teaching. In this role, teachers provide praise and correction in response to student work. This can be informal, which usually happens spontaneously in the classroom, or formal in response to exams and other formal assessment. In addition to being comfortable with this role with students, teachers also need to be familiar with some of the technical aspects of assessment as a part of their professional skills. 4. Mentor or model. This is an often overlooked but important role which teachers have, knowingly or unknowingly. Students will look to the teacher to see what kind of behavior is acceptable. The teacher also models language for students. For teachers of younger students, it is important to be aware that students will look up to you and want to please you. Your praise or criticism can have a huge effect, both positive and negative. 5. Walking library students will expect their teacher to be able to answer all of their questions authoritatively. In most cases, it is possible to anticipate and plan for these questions, especially at lower levels. Sometimes, however, the answer will not be immediately available. In that case, throw the question back to the class, set it as homework, or make a note to answer it in the next class. Some teachers have a corner of their board dedicated to such questions or student ideas, and this can be a great way to get students involved in answering their own questions. Students are now used to being able to access any kind of information immediately online, and many see their teacher as a walking internet connection. It is useful to remind students that they can find the answers to their own questions in order to encourage curiosity and learner autonomy. 6. Ringleader. In communicative tasks, where students are actively using language to communicate with other students, the teacher has to keep track of several different activities at once. With group work, the teacher must divide their time evenly between all of the groups, monitoring, giving feedback, correction or guidance where required, and keeping students on task. With multi-level or large classes, teachers may be juggling several different groups doing different activities at different times. One of the first things you will probably notice is the type of seating and how the desks and chairs are arranged. Are they fixed to the floor, or can they be moved? Are they in rows, columns, or in groups? This will affect how certain types of activities will run. If, for example, you want students to work in groups, the setup for the activity will be different in a room with fixed desks than in one where they are movable. Where is the teacher's desk and chair in relation to the students? Can you see all parts of the room from that point? This is an obvious point. In order to manage a room full of students well, the teacher must be able to see them. Making eye contact with students who are off task is a powerful tool which can be employed from any part of the room and at any part of the lesson, as long as the classroom layout allows it. Knowing that the teacher can see them from any vantage point also affects student behavior. They are less likely to go off task when they know they can be easily spotted. The next thing to pay attention to is the walls. Specifically, do you have a chalkboard or a whiteboard? Are there places on the walls where you can display student work, illustrate topics you will study, or put useful study materials? Creating an interesting, colorful room where students can display the work that they have done contributes to student motivation and makes the classroom more attractive and pleasant to be in. Additionally, resources such as posters of vocabulary, useful phrases, etc. can feed into the content of the lesson or provide useful prompts for students during a lesson. Students who feel motivated and supported in the classroom are less likely to be disruptive. Before planning to use any kind of technological teaching aid, whether a computer or a CD player, check the fixtures in the room. Is there a computer or projector? Are there fixed speakers? Where are the PowerPoints? How many are there? We will look at potential pitfalls with technology later in the module, but when you do your preliminary check of the classroom, look for the basics. No matter how much or little technology your school uses, you will probably need a PowerPoint at some stage, so find out where they are and check that they work. Make sure you know how to connect your hardware to the fixtures in the room and that you have all the cables you need. As well as problems with technology ruining your beautifully planned lesson whilst you are busy fumbling around trying to get the projector to work, your students are finding ways to amuse themselves, perhaps at your expense. Finally, how comfortable is the room for students to work in? What kind of heating or air conditioning is there? Does the room have a thermostat, or is it centrally controlled? Can the windows be opened? Students who are uncomfortable will not be able to concentrate. Those who are too hot will be lethargic and not want to participate, while those who are too cold will be reluctant to engage in the lesson.
A seating plan is the most efficient solution in medium to large classes, especially if combined with photos of students. There are many templates available online, but a hand-drawn plan is just as effective. Using a seating plan establishes the teacher's authority at the outset and allows the use of students' names from the first lesson. It is especially effective with classes of young learners or teenagers, but with small classes or adult learners, a seating plan may appear heavy-handed. In this case, use games to help everyone learn names. Seating plans in large classes means that the teacher can call on students directly, talk to students using their names, and allocate responsibilities, rewards, and penalties from the first lesson. Making the effort to learn names quickly also shows students that you view them as individuals. Seating plans should be flexible. Once the teacher has learned the students' names, they can be used to place students in different combinations. In this way, the teacher can separate problematic pairings and prevent potential management issues arising. Students can be seated according to learning styles or levels to encourage peer learning. Refreshing the seating plan and trying different combinations is a simple way of re-energizing the class if you feel the atmosphere is getting stale. Teachers who place themselves above the rules or who are inconsistent in their application breed resentment and mistrust among students, which creates a tense atmosphere. Teenagers are particularly sensitive to hypocrisy, and so it is even more important for teachers working with this age group to be scrupulously fair and consistent in the way they apply rules with their students and in the way they model them. Students of all ages are more likely to accept classroom rules if they have had a say in what they are and if they understand the reasoning behind them. In the next section, we look at how 3 teachers developed a set of classroom rules and why they took that approach. We're going to start by looking at a very unclear example so that you will have an idea of how crucial instructions are to a problem-free lesson. Listen to a teacher giving instructions to her class.
So, you are in a pair. I mean 2 people working together, but one person will run and one person will write. The one person, I mean the person who wants to run, runs over to that wall over there, and you can see there's a piece of paper stuck to the wall. Can you see? No, don't go over there yet, just wait a minute. No, can you sit down, please? Thanks. Okay, where was I?
Preparation is everything. The instructions for an activity should be prepared before the lesson. Simplify instructions as much as possible. Keep the steps involved to a minimum, and keep the language especially simple. You want the students to focus on what they are going to do, not on trying to understand your language. As a general rule, keep vocab and grammar at a level below what your students are currently studying. Thus, for example, if you are teaching an intermediate level group, keep the vocab and grammar in your instructions to a mid to late elementary level. Supplement the language with actions and gestures, and speak at a somewhat slower pace than normal. Notice the difference in the following dialogue.
Okay, can the 3 team leaders give out the books to their teams? Everyone have a book. Great. You'll also need a piece of paper and a pencil, so can you get those ready too? Okay, turn to page 34. Have you got it? Right. Can you do the exercise at the top of the page, please? 5 minutes. Okay, has everyone finished? Now I want you to interview the person next to you. Please write their answers down on your paper. Andrea, what are you going to do now?
Talk to my partner and write their answers.
Great. And where do you write the answers?
On the worksheet space.
Excellent, you have 10 minutes.
Feedback should be timely. Put simply, this means giving feedback as soon as possible. Although this sounds simple in theory, it's actually a bit
In this unit, we will look at why it is important for teachers to know their students.
By the end of this unit, you will recognize different learning styles. Identify activities which will help students with various learning styles. Recognize what motivation is and the 4 theories of motivation. Identify how motivation affects classroom management. Identify some strategies for managing mixed ability classrooms and the rationale behind using them. Identify the key elements of a student profile. And identify how a student profile can contribute to effective classroom management.
Let's start by looking at each of Gardner's 8 intelligences.
Visual spatial. Students with a visual spatial learning style learn through visual or observed things. They need images or to see things written down or diagrammed and probably look at the images in a book before reading the text. These students remember by seeing pictures or creating mind maps and enjoy problem solving with different shapes and pictures. They are also good at manipulating shapes and images. Kinesthetic. These learners learn by doing. They need activities where they can touch, feel, hold, and do. They may be good at sport or anything related to movement such as dancing or acting, or they may be good at fixing things or crafts. Some kinesthetic learners may have been told they are hyperactive or have attention deficit disorder. Intrapersonal. These students know themselves very well. They are in touch with their own feelings and set personal goals and deadlines. They can be quite determined people who know their own strengths and weaknesses. These students are happy working alone. They enjoy writing journals or blogs and are independent learners. Interpersonal. These learners enjoy any task where they are working with others and can look at an issue from a different point of view. They are probably involved in clubs and are very sociable. They genuinely care about other people. Interpersonal learners are probably good at understanding how other people are feeling from their body language or tone of voice and are good at resolving disputes between friends. Logical mathematical. These students enjoy solving puzzles and finding logical connections and patterns between things. They like to work systematically, using lists and paying close attention to detail. They like to work through a problem carefully and think about the consequences before acting. Linguistic. This learning style involves the transfer of information through reading or writing or through the spoken word in conversation or debates. These students are good at explaining things and telling stories. They are probably good listeners and can quote from their favorite movies and TV programs. They may like to think out loud and do crosswords and word puzzles. Musical. This learner learns through sound, song, and music. They are able to remember through rhythm and jingles, and probably enjoy all kinds of music depending on their mood. They may write their own music, but probably frequently sing, hum, or whistle to themselves. Naturalistic. These students are similar to kinesthetic learners, but they are interested in being outside in all things natural, whether it's astronomy, the environment, animals, or gardening. They're happiest outside, using a hands-on approach to interact with the environment in some way.
In the next part of this section, we'll look at some common classroom activities and determine what kind of learner they would work best for.
There are several activities which can be used to teach grammar. I will comment each one of them, while identifying which kind of learner the activity would work best for. The teacher provides a written worksheet about a grammar point. This is a classic classroom or homework activity which works best for linguistic learners. Information is transferred through writing, and the focus is on language, so the linguistic learner will be completely comfortable with this activity. Learners create a mnemonic or rhyme to remember a grammar rule. Musical learners will love this activity. Using jazz chants, songs, or music in class will also engage these learners. Learners do a Find Someone Who activity using a grammar point. This activity will be especially enjoyable for interpersonal learners. They have the opportunity to chat and mix with a lot of different people, finding out more about their classmates as they study a relevant grammar point. Learners walk by the sea and write what they see using the past simple. Naturalistic learners will be greatly engaged by this activity, especially if they are allowed to write their description outside as well. Learners complete a worksheet which personalizes the grammar like writing sentences that are true for you. While personalization of grammar is a good idea for all learners, intrapersonal students will derive the greatest benefit from this type of activity. The teacher draws a set of daily activities, and learners write the descriptions. Any activity involving drawing or diagrams will engage a visual spatial learner the most. This activity could be extended to allow the students to draw their own pictures of their typical day. Learners play a board game to practice conditionals. This is a great activity for kinesthetic learners. They will enjoy being able to move around a board and physically interact with the language they are using. Card games and role plays are also effective with these learners. Learners work out the grammar rule by studying some sentences and using discovery activities. Logical mathematical students will enjoy the problem-solving aspect of this activity. They will enjoy looking for the pattern and finding exceptions to the rule.
It's quite difficult to always have a range of activities for each learning style in all lessons. But one area I've found that is great for this is vocabulary work. I try to have a mix of activities on regular rotation, and I use different ones for presenting new vocabulary, reviewing old vocabulary, or working on word building / word grammar type lessons. Whenever possible, when introducing new vocabulary, I try to use visuals, realia, or flashcards. I think it really helps to cement the vocabulary, and they provide options for activities like memory games, etc. I let my students draw the word beside the written form if they want to, and a lot of my current students really enjoy this. If we've built up a lexical set, I'll get students to do posters of them, where they illustrate the words in the set. Then I put them on the walls for students to use. We also use cut-up magazines for vocabulary review. Students create a collage and label the pictures with the appropriate vocabulary. I usually get students to do a mind map of all of the words they know about a topic either at the beginning of a new topic or at the end to see what they remember. These students usually add to their mind maps as we progress through the topic. If I can, I find a song connected with the topic that ideally features some related vocabulary, and we listen to it in class. I usually do a simple gap fill activity with it, but sometimes we spend time learning a song, if the class really likes it. I've had students perform songs in class too, and it's amazing how quickly they learn and retain vocabulary from songs. These activities are really enjoyable for everyone, and they make a nice change from the usual classroom activities. An activity I do a lot with vocabulary is a quick quiz which the students do in pairs. They test each other and can work with a different partner each time. It's good to mix pairs up, and my sociable students like this type of activity. We also do a lot of interviews and find someone who activities to review vocabulary, which adds an interactive element. Learning vocabulary is a highly subjective thing, so I give my students the option of making a vocab journal, where they choose the vocabulary that is most useful for them and record it in a way that is useful for them. I have this as an option because many students don't want to work with vocabulary this way, but some love making a personal connection with the vocabulary they learn. Giving them the choice of how they record and work with the vocabulary also works well with these learners. Finding a hands-on way of learning vocabulary can be challenging. Where possible, I ask these students to make labels of the things in the classroom, and we use cards to play games that review vocabulary or allow students to use vocabulary they have learned. I have a board game which focuses on word forms, and it's a fun and active way to work with that topic. We also sometimes play word charades where students act out the word for their teams to guess, or a form of Pictionary. These are all ways of making vocab work more active. I do have some students who genuinely enjoy working with word forms though. We play games where students have to think of as many different forms of a word, or related words from a word stem as possible. Some of my students are great with this. They love playing around with prefixes and suffixes and building words up using the rules they have learned. Wherever possible, I try to let students work outside, but it's not always possible or appropriate. With language connected to animals and the natural world, we label diagrams especially on natural cycles and make a lot of mind maps. For a unit on volcanoes, some students made a working model and labelled it, which was great.
Well, this teacher has found a range of activities to use when working on vocabulary. Let's now listen to her rationale for using them.
The first group of activities, realia, flashcards, posters, collages, labelling pictures, works really well with my visual spatial learners. Actually, most students learn using this intelligence type, and it's especially good with vocabulary. We learn our first language by naming things we see, so I think when learning a new language it makes sense to give students a strong visual image of new vocabulary. I use mind maps regularly with my students, and the linguistic learners like them very much. These students have a bit of an advantage in the language classroom because they are naturally drawn to language and words, but using mind maps allows them to summarize and connect topics and add to them as their vocabulary learning develops. Any song-based activity, jazz chant, or rhythm activity is great for musical students. Clapping out syllables or making rhymes to a jingle are also good ways to keep these students motivated and participating. Using songs in class is something everyone enjoys, I've found, and these activities are a great opportunity for musical students to shine. Interpersonal students can struggle with vocabulary learning because so much of remembering new vocabulary really just comes down to learning and memorizing it. The small interactive quizzes are a good way to get interpersonal students involved and using new vocabulary in a reasonably authentic way. The focus is on communicative activities where students can work together with new vocabulary. I think intrapersonal learners have the advantage for vocabulary learning for similar reasons that interpersonal learners struggle. Intrapersonal students enjoy choosing vocabulary they can use. They like ordering and organizing their notebooks and are good at personalizing and using vocabulary to talk about their lives. Vocabulary learning is largely a solitary activity, which is the kind of learning these students do best. One of the learner types I find most difficult to accommodate is the kinesthetic learner. I think that's because I don't favour that learning style myself, so it's something I really have to remind myself to include in my lessons. The games I have for vocabulary review are fun, and the whole class likes them, but they are the only times that I see my kinesthetic learners relaxed and fully engaged. Usually, I wouldn't try to get my active kinesthetic students anywhere near word forms, unless there's an interactive element to it. I've found that using internet resources is also good with these learners. I use a lot of inductive learning with simple grammar, and in vocabulary extension work, these activities also work well, especially with logical mathematical learners. Because these students enjoy looking for patterns and problem solving, these kinds of activities are a great way to get them working with vocabulary rules. I think a lot of language learning does involve learning patterns and problem solving, but in normal classroom teaching we can overlook that. It takes a little longer to really sit back and let the students figure it out, but I think it's an authentic way of dealing with new language, and I have found that they remember the rules more easily when they've worked them out for themselves. My naturalistic learners are the most difficult group to accommodate, though. In vocabulary learning, they are great with mind maps about animals. They enjoy labeling diagrams about the natural world, and any time that a topic lends itself to a trip outside, I try to take advantage of that. In normal school life, however, we are mostly confined to the classroom, so we have a lot of plants and natural imagery in our room. Unfortunately, we can't have animals, but I'm sure some of my students would really enjoy taking care of a class pet, and that it would generate a lot of learning opportunities.
The first strategy teachers can use is grouping students. Creating groups with both weak and strong students and letting them work together to achieve a target encourages more independent learning. It allows the stronger students to adopt a mentor role, and many such students respond extremely positively to this. If the teacher specifies that each student in the group must have a role, this ensures that all students participate according to their ability and reduces the chance of stronger students dominating. This allows weaker students to focus on what they can do rather than on what they can't, while contributing actively to the task. In this way, weaker students develop confidence and motivation. The next strategy is called scaffolding. Much like on a building site, scaffolding provides extra information and practice that students need to be able to learn something. Once the students understand, the scaffolding is removed. This means breaking an activity down so that students get practice in the component parts they need in order to complete the task. One way to do this is to remind students of what they already know. In the language classroom, this could mean having the class work together to brainstorm a list of vocabulary before a writing task. In this way, the weaker students have the chance to review vocabulary and have a larger pool to draw from than if they were left to their own devices. Another great way to scaffold is to use visuals to elicit student ideas and vocabulary. Similarly, a teacher might provide a material which structures the process of brainstorming to help students do this by themselves for the first time. An important part of scaffolding in the language classroom, of course, is ensuring that language is simple and clear so that students can focus on the content, not on trying to understand what the teacher is saying. Scaffolding in the mixed ability classroom is essential because it allows weaker students to review and practice earlier material before applying it in a task. Scaffolding allows weaker students to participate more fully. In mixed ability classes, the focus is often placed on weaker students, as teachers try to make sure these students can participate and reach the required level. However, in doing this, stronger students are often all but forgotten. It is assumed that these students will follow the lesson and that they will not experience any problems with the material. This may be the case, but they will not be challenged either, and their motivation can suffer as a result. This is why having extension activities for fast finishers and students who easily complete their work is a good idea. An activity which follows on from the classroom activity, but which provides a slightly higher challenge, is an extension activity. It is important that the activity be fun and motivating, however. Strong students should not feel that they are being punished by getting extra work. They should feel excited to try something new and fun. Puzzles and problem-solving activities are especially good for these kinds of students. Giving students an inductive activity where they try to guess the grammar rule of the next learning point also allows the student to take on a teaching role. Extension activities allow stronger students to work at the pace they have set for themselves and to not have to wait for everyone else. They stay occupied and challenged, which makes them less likely to cause classroom management problems. The final strategy for dealing with a mixed ability classroom is peer teaching. This is where students teach each other. This can be done in a pair, in a group, or as group, or pair, or individual to the whole class. This strategy again allows all students to contribute their knowledge or skills and also allows them to learn something independently and present it to their classmates. The focus moves from the teacher to the students, and the teacher's role changes to a monitoring and observing role. In order to teach their peers effectively, students must know their topic, organize and present the information in a way that their classmates will understand, and then check they have understood. Placing weaker students in a pair or group with stronger students enables the task to be structured so that all students participate to their ability. It also permits stronger students who can sometimes be impatient with slower learners to develop some empathy and understanding with their classmates.
Hopefully now you have an idea of some strategies you can use to manage a mixed ability group.
First of all, let's start with the basis of the lesson, the activities that you use. The type, purpose, and number of activities teachers use with young learners are very different from those for older students. As we've seen, young learners can't concentrate on one activity for too long. Logically, this means you will have to have a greater number of activities planned, but because of their developmental needs, the types of activities will also need to be a little different. Anything that shows clearly when the activity is winding down and will allow the teacher to move on to the next activity while keeping small hands out of trouble. The second group of strategies relates to the use of routines. Routines teach students about expected behavior, provide structure and familiarity, and fill in potential gaps in the lesson which are opportunities for disruption. The third group of strategies involves the use of rewards and praise. Different cultures have different approaches to this, so it's important for teachers to ensure they are consistent with school policy.
Young learners have very different requirements from older students, and teachers must bear this in mind when planning lessons and working with them. Developing routines will help a great deal, as will varying the type, number, and pace of activities. Praise students often for the effort they are putting into their work, cleaning up, helping their friends, or lining up with their bags, but avoid punishment. Teaching young learners is not for everyone, but those who choose to work with this age group are passionate about their work, and it can be a highly rewarding group to teach.